So welcome to Feature Fridays. My name is Guy Bartram. I'm the Director of Product Marketing at VMware and delighted to be joined by Jay. Jay's first time on Feature Fridays. Welcome, Jay. Do you want to just tell people who you are and what you do?
Thanks, Guy. Thanks for having me for my first Feature Friday. My name is J.K. Shantayal and I'm a Senior Technical Product Marketing Manager, and I basically take care of the VMware Cloud Director and Cloud Director Service portfolio here in the marketing team.
Excellent. Thanks, Jay. And today we're going to be talking about some new aspect of Cloud Director, right? The API token. So
yeah,
let's start, Jay. What's the API token all about?
So this feature is all about leveraging the API token access to be given to the customers without having to share any tenant users, or rather any Cloud Director users' credentials. So basically, this feature was introduced in VMware Cloud Director version 10.3.1, and it is mainly for those users who do a lot of automations using scripts. So without as a tenant user or as a tenant admin, I do not have to share my credentials. When I say credentials, the username and password, I can generate the API token for the end user, and with that token, the end user can generate a bearer token also called as an access token, and that can be used to connect to VMware Cloud Director, and then the user can perform any task based on the permissions available within that API token.
Okay, cool. So this is making it a lot easier for a tenant admin to give their kind of users access via the API in a much more secure manner, right?
Right. It's basically for more secured access, and plus the other advantage of this feature is, let's say for example, I'm an org admin and I have a lot of tasks to do by myself, but I do not have the bandwidth or whatever you can say. So what I can do, I can basically raise this API token, give it to one of the users who will have the same rights and access as I do as an org admin, and all the same tasks what I can do from the UI portal can be performed by the user using the APIs. There are a few rights and roles which are not allowed to from the API token, but I'll talk about it when we go through the slides.
Okay, cool. Well, I think that's a great point to start going through the slides. And this sounds like it's going to be a useful feature to our cloud providers and help them manage things. Yeah, help them manage things a bit better.
Right. So I'll straight away jump onto the slides. Okay. So in this session, we'll discuss about the API access token briefly and see what it does. We'll also understand which authentication method it uses to authenticate the user from the API client. And we will look at some of the use cases of this feature. And then along with this, we'll also understand what kind of, or rather what permissions are required to be enabled for the user to be able to generate an API token. And then we'll look at some of the limitations this feature has, and this feature also has a timeout value, and also it generates a specific event which we will see, and then lastly we'll do a demonstration of the feature end to end.
Cool. Okay.
So as discussed, this feature was introduced in the version VMware Cloud Director 10.3.1, and the main feature or the main purpose of this feature is to allow the end user to connect to VMware Cloud Director without having to share any username and password from a user tenant or a provider tenant perspective. So basically, let's say on my behalf, let's say if I'm an org admin, I can give the API token with the same privileges to the user, and the user can perform all the same tasks as I can do in an tenant portal. There are a few caveats which I'll talk about, and which we'll see, and why that is important. So basically, with this API token, right? Let's say as a org admin, I have got, let's say I'm the ex admin right now, ex user. I have got the API token from the org admin. So what I will do is, from the API client, I will use the API token, and using this API token, I will generate an access token, also called the bearer token, and I will use that access token to connect to VMware Cloud Director from the API client for all the automations and other third-party application perspective. So this is how it works. So in short, I get the API token from the VMware Cloud Director user. Could it be provider admin, or could it be the tenant user who has access to generate the API token? And then with the API token, I will generate from the API client, I will generate an access token and use that access token to connect to VMware Cloud Director.
Got it. Yep, makes sense.
Now, this feature, right, uses the OAuth authentication model. So basically, we follow the RFC 6749 standards to get this feature or to get this component authenticated. So what is OAuth? It's one of the types of authentication prototypes which is supported by VMware Cloud Director. So it basically works on a refresh token system. If you look at the screenshot and the box which is highlighted, so this is the format, typical format of an OAuth authentication type, wherein we have to have the key value as a grant type, and then we refer the grant type to a refresh token, and then refer the refresh token with the actual API ID which is being generated from the UI portal. So this is how the OAuth functions. So once we have these parameters set in the API client, as a first step, right, the user who has the API token will have to do a post call to VMware Cloud Director, wherein if you look at the example at the bottom, it says you have to basically do the post call within OAuth. Now, depending, the API token was given to you by the provider administrator or the org administrator, the URL will change. Okay, yeah. So this is how this feature uses the OAuth authentication type and allows the end user to connect to VMware Cloud Director. Now, let's look at some of the use cases. As mentioned, this is heavily used by the users who do a lot of programming and do a lot of automation to connect to VMware Cloud Director to perform certain tasks. So it is heavily used for them and beneficial for them. And it can also be used by a lot of CAC users who have the task to deploy a lot of Tanzu clusters. So as let's say as an org admin, I can give the access token to one of the users, and then with the org admin privileges, the end user can spin up any number of Tanzu clusters and then provide the kubeconfig file to the end customers without having the actual org admin do the job. So in that way, the user who is performing the Tanzu cluster operations can end-to-end manage the clusters, operate the cluster, or delete or create the clusters. And this feature is also heavily used in Power CLIs. So again, when we create our scripts to perform certain tasks, this feature can be heavily used in Power CLI. And of course, this feature can also be used in a lot of third-party applications. For example, Terraform version 3.5 onwards rather. This feature can be leveraged and can be used to connect to VMware Cloud Director environment.
And is this something, Jay, would you recommend then this be used for, when we're using things like Terraform, obviously we're reusing it, and it's going to be something that's going to be there for a long time. Yeah. Would this be preferential to use the API access token versus having a dedicated user?
Yes and no. For the reason, again, it depends from the customer to customer guide. Let's say, for example, if I'm in an environment where I have the access to share a username and password with the user who has to perform or deploy the cloud objects for me, then yes, this feature is useful to them, but it's not mandatory. But these days, what we have seen, right, there are a lot of customers who go the API route and say, for example, I'm an org admin, right? And let's say I have two-factor authentication in my username and password. At that time, I cannot share it with any user, right? So in those situations, I will have to make sure that I have the same privileges in the API token, same tasks can be performed, but without sharing my username and password. So to answer your question, it is a recommended way in the future. wherein the org admin, obviously, right, we cannot share the org admin password, and situation where I have multi-factor authentication. In those cases, it's a very, very handful feature going forward.
Yeah, I can see that. Okay. Yeah, you raise a really good point. Multi-factor authentication. Yeah.
Yeah. So these are some of the features, use cases of this API access token. This is the initial stage of this feature, and as we progress with time, we'll see more and more feature enhancements within this feature.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's talk about some technical terms. Before a user can actually create the, or rather I would say generate the API token, the user must have certain rights. So by default, a provider administrator and the org administrator have the manage user API token rights and manage all user API token rights. Now, what's the difference between these two? The manage user own API token means whosoever has these rights can manage their own token only. When I say manage, create or revoke. But any user who have the manage all user API tokens can also manage other users token within the organization, or if it's a provider admin, can see everyone's, all the users API tokens which they have generated, right? So these two rights are mandate for any user to be able to manage the, or rather create the API token.
Okay.
And like I was saying in the beginning, this feature has some limitations, which is for good. First thing to understand is very, very important. Like I've mentioned, I would repeat this statement once again. If I'm a provider admin and if I generate the API token as a provider admin, the API token will have all the rights as the provider admin has. All right. So we have to be very mindful as to but using which user account you want to generate the API token and provide it to the end user. Okay. Now, irrespective of a provider admin generating this token or an organization administrator generating this token, there are a few caveats. Like for example, using the API token, you will not be able to perform any user management tasks. For example, as using the API token, even though the API token was generated by the provider admin, you will not be able to change the username and password or perform any user management tasks, create more tokens or revoke existing tokens. Okay. So these are the limitations, basically to have a controlled environment and not destroying any of the user access rights from the API side of the access. And along with this, you also cannot create or delete any user groups, roles, global roles, or write bundles. So these are again limitations using the API access token feature. And of course, you cannot change the rights of a role to manage or not manage all of the API tokens. So you cannot change these settings using an API token, even though it was created by the provider admin or the org admin. Usually these two admins have access to do all this from the UI portal, but from the API, they would not have any access.
Yeah, this makes sense. I mean, you're basically securing the ability. You don't want people to make changes and completely destroy the system, do you? So this, from an API that can be very easily done. So you want to make sure you're controlling that.
It's like the org admin gave me the access to do to perform certain tasks, and I tweak the org admin access itself, right? So that will make no sense. It's like being in the house and breaking your own walls. So it's like that.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we have something called as timeout value. So using the API tokens, when the end user generates the access token, right? By default, it will carry forward the maximum session timeout set by the administrator. So by default, the maximum timeout is 1,440 minutes. And when you generate the access token using the API token, if you look at the second screenshot, it says expired in 86400 milliseconds. That counts to 1440 minutes when converted. Okay. So this setting can be changed by the system administrator based on what they want as per their environment and restrictions. So this is the timeout value, which we have to be very mindful of. And
so just thinking about that in terms of, if you're using Terraform or something and you're using something to continually do something, can you increase that? What's the kind of maximum there? Because you won't want to be refreshing that every 1440 minutes.
The maximum timeout value, the best place I would say is to check the maximum guide of VMware Cloud Director. I do not know the number in my mind, but yeah, based on the like you said, right, we do not want to keep refreshing every 1440 minutes, let's say for example Terraform, but yeah, that can be increased to the maximum limit as per the maximum limit guide.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And lastly, any event which we, or rather any task performed using the API tokens, right? Obviously, it will generate events, but how do you differentiate what event was performed using, or rather what task was performed using the UI client and what tasks were performed using the API client? So any task which was performed using the API client using the API token, you would see an extra keyword called the refresh token in the events, which means that this ID or this task was spun up using the API client by the same user. I mean, so it will show the same user who generated the API token. But how to differentiate? You would see this extra refresh token ID, which will say that this particular task was performed using the API token using the API client.
Yeah, got it. Yeah.
So this is how you can differentiate between the UI task and the API tasks. So this is all about we have from an understanding perspective of this feature. So what we'll do now is I'll take you through a quick demo and showcase how you can basically generate your own API tokens, and then what all other options you can do. So just to reiterate, the API token feature works either with the provider credentials or with the OR credentials. All right. So in this lab demo, I will be using the organization credentials, and I will showcase how the tokens can be generated and other related items. So before we start, what I'll do is I will log into the provider portal, and I will show you the rights which needs to be enabled and published to the organization.
Okay.
So once you log in as a provider administrator, you navigate to administration section. And for example, I go to the global roles section, and over here, organization administrator. If you expand users under access control, you see here, manage user API token and manage all user API tokens. So these have to be enabled by the provider admin, published to the organization, and then the organization administrator can give these rights to any tenant users as required.
Yeah.
And then the second thing to understand as a provider administrator, let's say, for example, I log into one of the organizations. Now, how would I know which all users have tokens generated? Or let's say, how would I know, how would I know a particular user has how many tokens, right? Mm-hmm. So once you log into the tenant portal as a system administrator, you navigate to the user, and let's say, for example, this user, I would have something called access token here, and I can see from here how many tokens this user has, and I can take a call depending on the situation, whether there are too many tokens more than what is required, and as an admin, I can revoke them. Okay.
I see that they've got no expiry. Is that?
One thing to right. So the access tokens do not have expiry, but the API tokens not have the expiry, but the access token which we generate from the API token does have expiry.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Now, as a provider administrator, how would you create the API tokens? So basically navigate to the provider portal and navigate to the user preferences. And if you see here, you see something called access tokens. You can generate access tokens from here. All right. But like I mentioned in this lab, we will use the org credentials to generate the API token. So what I'll do is I will log in to the tenant portal as a org administrator.
One too many A's there. All right. Oh yeah, tenant A admin.
Tenant A admin, yeah. I mean, I have multiple tenants in this lab. All right. Now, as a tenant user, once you log into the tenant portal, same location, navigate to the user preferences. And then you would see the option to create access token. So basically you click new, provide either the username or the client name, and then click create. And remember one thing, this is the only option you have where you can copy this API token. If you miss it, you have to revoke it and recreate another one, all right? Okay. So you copy this, and then what we'll do is we'll just paste it over here. After this, if you click OK, you cannot see the API token ID. And the only option you would have is to revoke this token, nothing else.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Now, once you have this API token, what you would do is you would navigate, let's say, to the Postman client, the API client rather, and you have to first make a post request to the VMware Cloud Director using the OAuth method to get a bearer token using the API client. All right. Now, what would you do is you would do a post call against the URL, which is the IP address or FQDN of the VMware Cloud Director server, OAuth. And since I'm using a tenant user, I will have to give the tenant keyword and the organization name. All right. Had it been provider, it will be replaced with provider.
Yeah.
Okay. And then /token. That's the first step. Second step. Now, what's the advantage of this feature? I do not have to share username and password. So obviously the type is set to no auth under authentication. All right. Third step, under the header, these are standards where I have to have an accept key value, content type, and content length. The important thing over here to understand is under the body, I have to give this OAuth format details. The first one, like we saw in the slides, grant type is equal to refresh token. And then the refresh token is the actual API token which we generated. So what I'll do is I will paste it over here. Okay, this is the API token which I have got from the org admin. And then I would do a post call. And I get this access token. All right. It's a long key. So copy this key. And what we'll do is we'll take this key. Now, this key is the source of truth for any end user to be able to connect VMware Cloud Director going forward. All right.
Yep.
Now, say for example, the next step would be to, let's say I want to list all the organizations available within this system or this environment. Now, as an org admin, whatever objects I'm able to, or am I allowed to see, I would see those objects. Okay. Now, after you have got the access token, the authorization will change to bearer token now. Usually what we do, we give basic auth and we give the tenant username and password or the provider username and password. But here it will be bearer token and then paste the token which was generated in the previous step.
Yep.
All right. Now, in this call, what I'll do is I'll do a get call against the Cloud Director server to get the organization details. If I click send, I see one organization. Why is that? Because as an org admin, I can only see my org, right? But had this been a provider API token, I would have seen multiple organizations. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now going forward, as an end user, you have this bearer token or the access token, and you can perform any task you want within the environment. For example, as an org admin, of course, I can create a catalog. I will show you how to create a simple catalog. So what I'll do is I will just use this body to create a catalog. So for in this example, I will do a post call against the Cloud Director server using the organization details to create a catalog. All right. And make sure that over here as well, my authentication type is bearer token, which is the access token or the bearer token, which was generated in step 1. Okay.
Yeah.
And as part of the header, again, depending on the object you create, these change. But what you have to notice over here is that the authorization bearer token should appear over here. Okay.
Yeah.
And let's say I'll create one simple simple catalog for you. So if I click send, it failed. Let's check why. I know why.
Did you change the token there? I don't think you did.
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, if I do a send request, it has now created the catalog. So what we'll do now is let's navigate to the tenant admin and check the task. You see here, created catalog demo 1, 2, 3. Very important thing to understand. Look at the initiator. It's the tenant admin.
Yeah.
But if I go to the before that, let me show you the catalog. And we have the catalog over here, demo 1, 2, 3. To know whether this task was spun up using the API client or the UI client, like I mentioned, you can go to the monitor section, events, and look at the event details, and it should give you the token ID. But why am I showing you here? That feature is now only available as a provider administrator. So only a provider admin can differentiate whether the task was spun up using the UI or the API token. For the tenant user to be able to see the events, whether it was API event or a UI event, it is a feature which is kind of in progress. Okay. So only a system administrator can see the detailed event for any given task. And as a tenant admin, in our case, if I want to revoke the token, I have to navigate again to the user preferences and then select the token you want to revoke and just click revoke. So this will basically revoke the token and any of the access which is being generated using this specific API token. And remember, we saw as a provider administrator, which all user has what tokens. That feature is only a feature which can be seen by the provider administrator. So if, for example, if I navigate to the same user via auth 1 as a tenant administrator, I would not be able to see the access token as of now. So only a provider administrator can individually see under each user what tokens are available with what user. So that's again a system administrator task, and it's a feature which is which needs an update, and it's a work in progress. Yeah. And what else? So that's it with this feature, Guy, about the API access token. it's a pretty cool feature which will really help all the programmers to automate things using the API token and not using the actual username and password of any of the tenant users.
Yeah, and I can see it's good. I mean, it's great to see some of the limitations here as well. So if you're intending on providing this to tenant admins, and as a provider, just know that you are the one who needs to be able to kind of see who's got those access tokens and who hasn't, just for now until the next release comes.
Right.
And hopefully that'll be fixed. But yeah, I can see this is going to make a huge difference. Logging in with usernames, passwords, and things like that in APIs is never really a preference. So this is going to be nice.
Right.
Jay, listen, man, thank you very much for your time. It's been great to chat to you, and look forward to our next sessions on VCD. But thanks for walking us through the API feature.
Thanks, Guy. No worries. Take care. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.